next grammar rule. Our next grammar rule is adjective, adverb. This is page 55. Page 55 of the writing manual. So first of all, we should probably define what adjectives and adverbs are, especially for those of you that don't already know. What is an adjective? An adjective is, hang on a second, words that describe nouns. So an adjective is a word that describes a noun. For instance, the big dog. So we have big describing dog. Big is a word that describes dog, which is a noun. Therefore, big is an adjective. Words that describe nouns. Adverbs are words that describe, most people just say verbs, but adverbs actually can describe a few different other parts of speech. They can describe verbs. That is the most common response when students are asked what an adverb describes. But they can also describe adjectives and other adverbs. And I'm going to go ahead and give you an example of each of those just so you know what the heck an adverb describing an adjective or another adverb looks like. So here is an example of adverb describing adjective. So if we say something like, he is extremely tall. So this tall right here, this is the adjective, and that adjective is describing this pronoun he. So an adjective, and by the way, adjectives can describe nouns or pronouns. You might want to add that. So we have an adjective describing this pronoun he. He is tall. And then we have this adverb coming in and describing this adjective, this adverb extremely. And by the way, most adverbs do end in ly. That's a good way to spot an adverb. That extremely is coming in and modifying the tall. It is telling us how tall this dude is. So this is an example of an adverb modifying or describing an adjective. And now an example of an adverb modifying or describing another adverb. What might that look like? If we have something like, he runs extremely quickly. He runs extremely quickly. So what we have in this case is we have this adverb quickly modifying this verb runs. So here's a verb runs. Here's an adverb quickly. That adverb is answering the question, how fast does he run? He runs quickly. But then we have this second adverb, this second ly word, and that ly word, that extremely, comes in and modifies this quickly. This extremely is answering the question, how quickly does this guy run? So this is one adverb modifying this other adverb. Extremely quickly, again, example of one adverb modifying another adverb. So keep in mind that adverbs can describe verbs. That's the most common situation, but they can also describe adjectives and other adverbs. In terms of examples 1, 2, and 3, let's take a look at number 1. By the way, you will note that the parts of speech themselves, the parts of speech in the name of the rule, adjective, adverb, they are also the tip-off clues for this rule. If you see an adjective underlined, your goal, your job is to determine if that adjective should actually be an adverb. And if you see an adverb underlined, you should determine if that adverb maybe needs to be an adjective. How do you answer that question? How do you answer the question, which part of speech do I need? Well, you look to see what the word is modifying. If the word is modifying a noun, then you do need the adjective. If the word is modifying a verb, an adjective, or an adverb, then you need an adverb. If you want to highlight this down here, that sort of sums up what I just said. If you see an adjective or adverb underlined, you just need to figure out what part of speech that word is describing or modifying, and then you have to decide if there is indeed an error. So in example 1, go ahead and do it on your own. Press pause if you would like. I'm going to go ahead and work through this right now, hoping that his paycheck was inside. Dwayne tore the envelope so blank that he nearly ripped the letter inside. So notice that quick is the adjective, quickly is the adverb. So we need to figure out what word in this sentence this word here, the quick or the quickly, is describing, and indeed it is describing the tour. How did Dwayne tear the envelope? This verb, we need to know how that verb was performed, and it was performed quickly. This is the adverb again, and adverbs modify verbs. We do need the adverb in this case, not the adjective. That is example 1. Example 2 and 3, I would go ahead and do both of those right now. Press pause on the video if you would like. So in number 2, we have the scene before us was truly magnificent with the sun setting, blah, 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 blah. So since we're in the adjective adverb section, I will go ahead and allow you to just focus on the adjectives and adverbs. And we do have an adjective adverb combination here. This is an adverb. This is an adjective. And then we have another one here. This is an adjective. And technically this is an adjective too, but we won't talk about that right now. We're just going to talk about the truly, the magnificent, and the serene. So in terms of truly magnificent, what do we have here? We have magnificent, which is an adjective that is describing this noun, scene. So that's perfectly fine. We shouldn't have to change this adjective magnificent to, let's say, magnificently. You wouldn't say the magnificently scene. You would say the magnificent scene. So magnificent is fine. It's an adjective modifying scene. And then truly is an adverb. And what is that modifying? It's actually modifying the magnificent. How magnificent was this scene? It was truly magnificent. So this is an adverb, an ly word. By the way, keep in mind that one of the ways you can almost always recognize an adverb is that adverbs end in, almost all adverbs end in ly. There are some adverbs that don't end in ly. Some of the time ones like seldom, often, those guys obviously don't end in ly, but a lot of the adverbs that you'll see on this test do end in ly. So it's a good tip-off clue for recognizing that you've got an adverb. So truly, once again, is an adverb modifying this adjective magnificent. And remember what we just said up top, that adverbs can modify adjectives. So that's perfectly correct. We've got a good combination there of adverb and adjective. Now, this serene, here is the deal with this serene. This serene is modifying this word floating. It is telling us how the ducks were floating. Now, you might be able to just do this based on sound. You might know that you would not say he is floating serene down the creek. You would say he is floating serenely down the creek. So indeed, the answer on this question is D, where we need an adverb to modify this floating rather than an adjective. Now, this floating, whether you see it as a verb or an adjective, it technically is an adjective, not a verb. But whether you see it as a verb or an adjective, it really doesn't matter, because the rule that we talked about is that an adverb is going to modify both a verb and an adjective, or either a verb or an adjective. So whether this word floating, whether you consider it a verb or an adjective, it doesn't matter. You need the adverb to modify it. Again, that word floating technically in this sentence is an adjective, not a verb. If you are confused about that and you want to know more, you can ask your tutor and you will hopefully get a good explanation. Number 3, production delays were notoriously difficult, blah, 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 blah. So what do we got here? We got an adverb here in A. We have an adjective here in D. This infinitive may actually also be acting as an adjective as well. It's actually describing obstacles, but we'll ignore that one for now. That's not all that important of a item to review in terms of the SAT. So let's look at this notoriously. So there's our adverb. So we need to figure out what that adverb is modifying, and it is modifying difficult. Difficult itself is an adjective modifying obstacles, difficult obstacles. So this is an adjective. This guy is an adverb. This adverb is modifying that adjective, and that's perfectly acceptable. We just said that adverbs are used to modify adjectives, so we've got a good situation there. Now, in terms of answer choice D, this effective is an adjective. We have to find out what that adjective is modifying or describing. Indeed, this effective is modifying works. It's answering the question, how does the technology work? And since this works is a verb, we actually need an adverb here, not an adjective. So the answer to this question is D, where we need the adverb effectively, not the adjective effective. So those are the main points for the adjective adverb rule. There is one other thing that you may want to know, and this is especially important if you are going for an extremely high score on the writing. If you are going for, let's say, 700 or above, then most likely you should know this information as well. And this information pertains to linking verbs. So adjective, adverb, and linking. And I will put a little parentheses here and write state of being verbs. Let me go ahead and give you a list of some of those right now. Taste, smell, sound, seem, feel, grow, to be, or just be, I guess I should say, since I have not put in any other twos. Sorry, let me get rid of that. So be, become, those are probably the most important. Oh, one other one that you should have written down is look. So let me add that to the end here, become and look. So here's the deal with these verbs. Students actually find themselves in this situation where they say, I feel bad, and they wonder if they're supposed to be saying, I feel badly. Now, here's the deal with the verb feel. The verb feel can actually be both an action. For instance, if you say, I feel the concrete. I don't know why the hell you would go around feeling concrete. It's a little weird, but whatever. And then it can also be a state of being. In other words, it can be not an action, but just a state of being. So if you say, I feel sick, that is just a state of being. In this case, what feel is serving to do is it's sort of serving to equate, to link the subject with this adjective here. It is basically saying I and sick are the same things. But notice that in this sentence, there's not any action going on. When you say I feel sick, you are not going up to something called sick and feeling it. That would also be very weird and gross. But anyway, again, this is an action. This is a state of being. And the rule here is this. When you have a state of being verb that is actually being used as a state of being verb rather than an action verb, you need to use the adjective. So you might want to write down with state of being, use an adjective. not an adverb. You want to use an adjective. So for instance, I feel bad versus I feel badly. A lot of students will say I feel badly is correct when in fact that is not correct. The only time that you would say I feel badly is if this was an action. So if you were going up to a pillow and feeling it and saying, oh yeah, this is concrete. It's definitely concrete. Then your action of feeling would be bad. You would be describing that action of feeling. You are not a good feeler if you go up to a pillow and you squeeze it and you say this is concrete. So again, most of the time on this test, when you have a state of being or linking verb, you are going to use the adjective, not the adverb. One more example. He looks angry versus he looks angrily at his brother. Now, each of these sentences is actually correct because in the first sentence, he looks angry. This angry is an adjective not describing the action looks, but the appearance of this he. He looks angry. So we are using an adjective to modify a pronoun here, and that is perfectly acceptable. That's exactly what we want to do. But in this sentence, the looks is an active verb. We are actually describing this he doing this action of looking at his brother. So in this case, we indeed do need the adverb angrily, because in this case, the adverb is describing this action of looking. It is telling us how this dude is looking at his brother. So on the SAT, though, ETS will make it very clear whether the verb is being used as an action verb, as it is in this second example, or a state of being verb, as it is in this first example. So once again, overall general rule, just to restate, with most state of being verbs on the SAT, you're going to need to look to use an adjective, not an adverb. If you see an adverb being used with a state of being verb, most likely that adverb is going to need to be changed to an adjective. So that's it for adjective, adverb. Fairly quick rule. We will go ahead and move on to comparisons.